Hello, Leeds United fans. We are back with another monumental preview. It feels like Huddersfield coming to Ellen Road, a Yorkshire derby. More than their side, definitely. I think Leeds take it quite lightly, but it's not a light game whatsoever, and I don't want to downplay the game that we've got coming up now. And I think it's a must-win. I think it's another must-win, and the pressure is, for me, palpable at the minute. And I'm going to get into why, and we are a certain way through the season as we approach this preview. And before I start the preview, everybody, please make sure you're liking the video, make sure you're commenting and subscribing as always. I really appreciate that. But we're getting to a point now where it's must-win territory, and a lot of you guys will say, "Connor, it's too early. It's too early." Well, you look at the season so far, and we're probably about a third of the way through now. Games are getting thicker, they're getting faster. We're getting towards Christmas, where the schedule, as we all know, is extremely intense. And Leeds, if our objective is top two, cannot be dropping many more points. I was doing a little bit of curious research a little bit earlier on before the preview, and I was having a look at Ipswich's coming fixtures, and I'd hark you all to go and have a look at that. And there's not many games in there for me where they're dropping many points. And obviously they've got the game in hand against Rotherham away, which you would expect, I will say, I'm not saying it will. The Championship works in weird and wonderful ways. You would expect them to win based on league positions and their away form at this moment in time, whenever that game is played. Obviously the flooding of the River Don stopped that last weekend. Then next six are favourable. And you look at Leeds' next six, take out Leicester, and it is also favourable. But for me, Leeds are at a point now where this is the best top two start we've ever seen in Championship history. I think the division is very good this year. I mentioned this last season on the debrief. Many people disagreed with me with the teams going down. I thought this season was going to be extremely tough in the Championship. Last season was a joke Championship level, and you've seen that with the three teams that have gone up, no disrespect, but it is what it is. This season is a lot more difficult. I think there are a lot more teams who have a better budgets than last season. I think they're a lot more aggressive. I think the squad building for each and every squad has been a lot better. But I think what you're seeing at the moment, even with rotation in that Ipswich side, with certain players maybe being left out or certain injuries, as I mentioned on the stream yesterday, they're still able to replace. We've seen Hutchinson come in, we've seen a Ladapo come in, and nothing really changes. The system is imperative. And I know a lot of you guys are going to get annoyed at me talking about Ipswich, but I'm doing this preview based on objectives, looking ahead. Is this a must-win game for Leeds if we are just looking at top six? No, we could. There's definitely it's a game Leeds should win, but it's not a must-win. We can recover. We can still get. Top six is for me right now something that Leeds will achieve by the end of the season. Top two is getting extremely difficult now, and that was why I was so downbeat last night. I was the other night. I was a bit, distraught, if I'm being honest with you. But maybe that's a little bit extreme. I'll say frustrated is probably the medium term there, where it delivers the most effect. Because Leeds can still catch the top two, but it's becoming an almighty task. Ipswich win that game in hand, it's 12 points, and then there's still fans telling me that it's catchable. It's a 4-game split really now. Ipswich have to lose 3 or 4 games. We have to then win 3 or 4 games on top of that to catch them. And obviously Leicester coming up away, are we going to be winning that? I think we can win that, but are we going to win that? That's the question. And it's becoming, as I've said at the start of the video, the structure of the video, it's becoming must-win territory now, because you are feeling Ipswich with this momentum and consistency and just the plethora of games they've played so far where they're not showing many cracks. I believe they've lost, is it 1 game all season against us? Might be 2 games, but I believe it's 1. And that's the subject of this preview. It's not to solely talk about the lineup and all this sort of stuff. It's to talk about that team that we're chasing. And, that team that we're chasing, they win the game in hand. They're only 2 points off Leicester. We're talking about a scenario here where Leicester, who've won 12 out of 13 games, can still, realistically get pipped by Ipswich. That's how good the top two have been. And it's almost not Leeds' fault. You know, in any other season, even last season, Leeds United would have been well in contention with that top two, but in a strange sort of way right now, it's out of our hands. So what have Leeds got to do? What have Leeds got to do this weekend? It's just keep winning. We have to keep winning. And that's why I revert to the start of the video when I said it's a must win and the pressure is on. Leeds can't drop any more points if Ipswich and Leicester are going at the rate that they're going. If they slow down, obviously, you know, then Leeds still can't really slow down because we have to make up that point gap. So it's where people's expectations are, because if people, fans, you know, are still on the bandwagon of it still being too early, that's fine. But Leeds, there's not much more room for error, because in my opinion, these two at the top have shown so far, and with their starts being the best two the division has ever seen in terms of a top two at this point, you would feel that they're going to be there or thereabouts at the end of the season in terms of comprising that top two. So what can we do this weekend? Well, I've mentioned yesterday a little bit of criticism towards Daniel Farke. I think he's got to revert back to the selection that we saw in terms of the win against Norwich. I think he's got to start questioning Somerville. I think that was a massive mistake for him the other night. I understand Nonto is one of our better players. I get that, but I think with the form that Somerville has been in, to just drop him outright is a very odd move. Kamara, as I mentioned several times, I was excited to see Gruev, but Kamara, what we do know and what we've spoken about on this channel multiple times, is he can bypass a press. Stoke were pressing like mad in that midfield the other day, and obviously it put a massive disadvantage at Ampadu as well. His performance levels were completely lowered and completely decreased, and I believe that was because he wasn't next to that midfield partner that you build up the cohesiveness with. You know, he was dropped, and suddenly it's a different profile, it's a different player. Where's he going to be? When's he going to pass me the ball? You know, the weight of pass to him might be different to what it is with Kamara. I rely on different things with Kamara as I do to Gruev. It's a massive, massive, massive point of contention just throwing another midfielder in there for his debut when you've had and built something with Kamara which has been very successful. So for me, you put Kamara back in there, and you know, you put Somerville back in there, especially in a home game. And I'll be honest with you as well, and I didn't ever think I'd be saying this, but especially, you know, recently, there is an argument that Dan James comes back in. I would like to see something where there's a bit of a balance between Somerville and maybe Nonto, because I think they are our two best wingers, and still Dan James coming off the bench and being effective that way. That's probably what I'd like to see. Can one play on the left, can one play on the right in terms of Somerville and Nonto? That's probably what I'd go for this game. Let's not beat around the bush with them two, you know, not being our best players out wide. They are. And I think that's probably the best way to go, with potentially Dan James coming off the bench. But I think for this game in particular, he's got to be proactive. Farke, if it's not going well, change it at half-time. Don't change it on 70 minutes. And I think we've seen a little bit of inconsistency with him. I'd like Leeds to go after Huddersfield. I'd like to see a more functional press from the front line. I'd like to see Rutter in the 10 and Perrault at the front. Do I think we will see this? I don't, because I think he's very stubborn with his tactics. And that can work in a way, but it can work against him in another way. I feel when Perrault is part of that midfield compartment, Leeds are completely outnumbered, because Perrault doesn't offer anything in that midfield whatsoever. So I feel pushing him further up and having Rutter comprising that midfield area, he presses a lot more, he's a lot more aggressive, his physicality is better. You know, there's points in the game against Stoke where Rutter is defending a hell of a lot more. You know, there's a couple of times where he's helping Sam Byram out, getting his body in the way, winning free kicks. But then he's been asked to play up front as well. You know, there needs to be a little bit more understanding there for me. I don't think that's quite working. It's not consistent. And I think that with Leeds is the thing at the minute. It's consistency. Can Leeds build up that consistency that Leicester and Ipswich have got? Because if we don't, and if we are drawing the odd game and losing the odd game, you can count top two out. You really can. And a lot of people come on this and be upset maybe at the fact that I've said that. But when it gets to maybe 13 points, when it gets to 15 points, when it gets to maybe 16, you know, if Leeds are being inconsistent and those two other teams are being consistent, there's got to be a conversation at some point that that's just too much ground to make up. That ground will probably never have been made up in Championship history, because that would take a massive downturn, I should say, in results from both of the top two sides. Like an incredible, like losing 4 or 5 games which at the minute they're not losing any games. So it's very difficult at the minute, and I'm looking at that top two and thinking that Stoke game could have been the hammer, the nail in the coffin. I hope I'm wrong. And I can be wrong. Of course, I can. I'm wrong plenty times on this channel. I'm sure the top comment will be on this video that we will catch Ipswich and they will lose players and their form will dip. I think what we can hope for is maybe McKenna gets tapped up by another Premier League club in January. That maybe takes a downturn in Ipswich's form. They've still got some tough games to play away from home. I don't think they've played the likes of Leicester, Norwich, obviously us away from home, some of those top 6 sides as well. I think they've had a decent run in, a much easier run in my opinion, than Leeds and Leicester. But they are keeping it up. And as we know with Marcelo Bielsa, the system reigns supreme. And Kieran McKenna has had an exceptional system that has reigned supreme and is working at Portman Road and has been working at Portman Road till Leeds United turned up for the best part of 2 years, 2 and a bit years. And alongside that, their away form seems to be matching that at the minute. And there doesn't seem to be many championship teams who are causing them that many problems, which is a bit of an issue for us because I don't think we've started badly at all. I think the problem is it's the top 2. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this one. What would you do? Does Kamara come back in for you? Do the wingers start? Who comes in place of the wingers for you? Does Farke need to get it right this weekend in terms of selection, or will there be more questions asked? Am I being deluded about the points our Leeds going to catch Ipswich? Don't get abusive and aggressive, guys. It's just football opinions. It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. Make sure